locking in my predictions for the Drivers' Championship in the 2025 F1 season. Welcome everybody, welcome to my first ever Formula One video. Well, actually my first ever YouTube video, to be honest, where it's just me speaking. My name's Matt. I've decided to start this channel as I've been an F1 fan for as long as I can remember, to be honest, and I've always wanted to share my thoughts with the wider F1 world and start to build up a bit of a community and form some sort of podcast or something on those lines. So I thought I'd start here and get a couple of videos out. And so if you're watching this, thank you. It's likely that you'll be one of my first ever viewers, so really means a lot if you are paying attention. I'll get it out there because I need to try and build a community, right? Give it a like, give it a subscribe, check a comment down below. I really want to try and build something here where others are involved in this journey too. So let's make a start. So here we go. My thoughts on the 2025 F1 Drivers' Championship. Now, starting right at the top. I'm going 1 to 20. It's Lando Norris. I think this is going to be Lando's year, personally. McLaren, towards the end of last season, they got that car absolutely locked in. It does help, I'll be honest, right from the off. I'm a big Lando fan, big McLaren fan. But with Red Bull's car lagging a little bit towards the end of last season, I think it was coming to the point where McLaren were really starting to show where they had the upper hand, and I can't see Red Bull bouncing back this year. More on that later, but they're going to keep going as the front runners for me, and Lando's going to be at the front of that charge. I think it was quite clear last year, once we got papaya rules and everything else out the window and put that in the bin, that the team were focused on one driver. I think they're going to keep that going this year. Lando is their golden child, regardless of, I think Oscar, time of filming this, has signed a new multi-year deal, so there's certainly, plans to bring them aligned, but personally for me, I think McLaren are going to focus on Lando for this year. I think he's going to come back with a different mentality, which is going to help. I think he let Max walk over him a little bit last year, to be honest. And this year, I think he's going to have really taken stead of that over the break and sort of thought, right, I need to give it a go this year. Otherwise, it might never happen. Going into 2026 is a completely different ball game. So as long as he can, Max is going to be a bit off the heels. Can't see the Red Bull locking in the same way. I think they're building towards something else. I think it'll mean Lando will be able to stretch his legs a little bit. So, Lando Norris, first place for me. Second place goes to Charles Leclerc. Now, Mr. Consistent this year for me, if I'm honest. I think ahead of Oscar, although McLaren are going to have the better car. And the Red Bulls and Mercedes, they're going to be lagging behind. I think Charles is in for an absolutely solid season. I just don't think he's going to have enough in him to compete with the likes of Lando and the McLarens maybe together. I think if McLaren's sensible, they're going to use Oscar as that kind of weight between the two, maybe hold the pack back a little bit and let Lando and Charles really go at it. So Charles Leclerc for me in second place. Third, we're back to Papaya, and it is Oscar Piastri. For me, the car was just too strong. He's going to have a great year, and I think there's just going to be a few little things that keep him behind Lando, where he doesn't have quite that much experience or be seen as the kind of first driver in the team. I think McLaren are going to focus on Lando this year. I think they're going to, let Oscar kind of be that second driver, and really just to make sure that he's consistently up in that top 3 or higher spots to make sure the constructors comes back home. But Lando is given the opportunity to stretch his legs out in front. I can just see it going that way. Fourth place for me, and I am denied over this one quite a lot, is reigning champion Max Verstappen. For me, this is going to be a talent over car performance year. I do believe Max is the best, or certainly one of the best drivers on the grid as it stands, but the car is just going to let him down this season, as we saw towards the end of last. I may be completely off, and they could have worked a miracle over the off-season, but with the way the season finished, Adrian Newey leaving the team, and just what felt like the general vibe coming out of Red Bull last year, I think it's going to stay the same way, and McLaren are just going to keep that momentum going for me, where we've got this, I'll call it gap year, I guess, between last season and the 2026 regulation changes coming in. I think we're going to see Max a little bit further down the pecking order, but with his talent still putting in some good performances. Next for me is Mr. Lewis Hamilton. his first season in Ferrari red, and didn't think it was ever going to happen, to be honest. But I've not always been a massive Lewis fan. I'll be honest, he's grown on me over the last couple of seasons where he started to struggle a little bit more. I think it's humanised him a little bit, and I think the media, I'm British, I live in Wales, seeing the media storm around him didn't help that, and I got suckered into it a little bit too much. But look, there's going to be some embedding time. Lewis is going to be chomping at the bit to prove a point here. He's taken a very good seat away from Carlos Sainz, and I think he knows that, and I think he knows he's got to perform, because if he starts coming below the level that Carlos was at, there's going to be questions asked regardless of his pedigree from before. He also left Mercedes on very good terms, so he's going to want to prove again to Toto, who's clearly his friend. They've obviously got some business dealings that still go on, or certainly a friendship there coming out of Toto's, I think, was it apartment a couple of days ago or whatever it might have been. He's going to want to get one up on his old boss and prove a point. Next for me is Lewis's old teammate, Mr. George Russell. I just don't think Mercedes are going to be competing this year. I think they're going to take a view a little bit like Red Bull. Although Red Bull have still obviously got a point to prove because they were the outgoing losing team last year, where they're going to be focusing on 2026 more so than this year, but still putting themselves in the mix. George, I think he's going to be consistent. His performances are always relatively consistent, pretty consistent, certainly known as Mr. Saturday as opposed to Sunday. So he always locks in that excellent quali time. But for me, it's going to be the same place as last year. He finished in 6th. I think he's going to end up exactly where he was. There'll be some moments of brilliance, but I just don't think he's going to have the wheels underneath him to be able to compete as much as he'd like. Back to the Red Bull. Stealing the seat away from Sergio Perez, and some may argue Yuki Tsunoda, but that's a different story altogether. Liam Lawson. So I think he's coming in at 7th place this year. Clearly he's a talented driver, but he's coming into this bogey seat, and I think that's going to be a factor. His mental agility to get through the season is going to have to be incredibly high, and he's going to need some time to adjust. It's clearly not an easy car to drive. Max made that point very clear last year as well. There was times when he struggled with it, and he's the driver they built the car around. So coming in as that second driver where Sergio struggled so much, I don't think we can compare them as drivers. Liam is obviously a young, talented driver. Sergio, further in career, clearly under completely different levels of pressure. I think Liam's going to get that same level of scrutiny that we saw Alex Albon go through a few seasons ago. And again, what Sergio went through. So 7th place for me. It's going to be a good season. Not a phenomenal one in his first year. Next up for me, 8th place, is Kimi Antonelli. I'm a bit stuck what to say here because I want to see him perform a bit. Where we've seen Liam a little bit more, I haven't seen a lot of Kimi at that level, and any of him, and it's a big risk for Mercedes and Toto to take. But he's clearly talented. He's very highly regarded at Mercedes, and he's going to be in a pretty solid car. Those first few races, I think, we're going to take a bit of time to adjust, but he will certainly get there. I just think he's going to lag behind him those first couple. Maybe have a good start in Australia, but it's going to be tough to get adjusted very quickly. And he's also coming in to fill the seat of one of the arguably the greatest drivers of all time. So this is a big gap to take over. It's going to take him a few races, and I think the expectations are just too high. So I've got him in 8th place finishing the year for me. 9th place for me, and who is my absolute boss driver for the year, is Carlos Sainz. Carlos, I think, is going to have an absolutely fantastic year in that Williams. I really like the Williams car. I like the setup. I like what James Vowles is doing. Sure, they're building on a few things. There was moments of almost brilliance last year and flashes of that kind of skill coming through. But for me, Carlos is going to be on an absolute man on a mission this year. He's really got a point to prove to get himself back up to that kind of top 4 team level. I think Williams are going to finish quite high anyway, but getting himself back up to that top 4 level is going to be what he's aiming for. Big changes coming next year as well. So look, he's going to be my driver of the season from a performance perspective, and I'm really excited to see what he can do. I'm rooting for him all the way. 10th place, Mr. Fernando Alonso. The old head, I think, is going to keep him up there in the pack here. The Aston Martin, obviously, we saw it go a couple of seasons ago to where he's right at the top of the pack, competing every single race, and then all of a sudden we drop back off. So, they've got this master plan, billions of dollars being spent on the team through Mr. Stroll there, Lawrence Stroll. Fernando with his old hat, I think his old head, is just going to be that one who's going to keep them just just above that kind of the tipping point from falling lower down the pack. Granted, we got Adrian Newey in. What's Adrian Newey been brought in to do is what we don't know. Clearly, he's not sat there twiddling his thumbs. But is he developing a car for this season, or is he developing a car for 2026? Or is it a mix of the two? We're not going to know until they get out there. But for me, Fernando is a pretty solid bet all year. So I got him in 10th place. 11th place for me, second Williams driver. Although we say second, hard to pin who's number 1 and number 2 here based on where they've been sitting over the last few years, but it's Alex Albon. I'm a big Alex fan, but honestly, I think he's going to be second wheel to Carlos this year. I really do love his driving, and I hope I'm wrong, but Carlos is just going to come out with a different edge, I feel, and that's going to be what separates the two of them. He's going to have a point to prove, and Alex just needs to keep things consistent. You know, he's not really got seat at risk. He's not really got any issues in the background. Carlos is just going to come in with that action notch turned up to 11, and I think that's what's going to be the difference here. So Alex Albon is going to have a good year. He's going to help Williams get right up in that constructors table for me, but it is 11th place. Okay, down in 12th now as we come down to the sort of bottom end, for want of a better phrase here, Pierre Gasly for me. And I'm a bit torn. Alpine for me, they seem to blow hot and cold, as depending on which way the wind blows almost, but Pierre seems to be that driver that can always pull a result out of the bag, and he's going to be carrying the team for this year for me, with Doohan getting his head around things. There's a lot of pressure on Doohan from a number of different angles coming at him, even though we've only really seen him once. I just think it's going to be interesting to see how that sits, but Pierre, 12th place for me. I think he's just the Alpine's just going to be above those other cars. But overall for Alpine, I think they will struggle with the two drivers, and it'll be interesting to see how the season plays out. 13th spot for me, I absolutely love this guy, Yuki Tsunoda. I'm on Team Yuki with regards to him getting in that Red Bull over Liam Lawson, if I'm honest. Not that I'm knocking Liam in any way, shape or form. I don't think we should be doing that. The guy deserves a shot clearly as anyone else, but I think Yuki had really proved himself over the last couple of seasons. Where Yuki was letting himself down, I think, was that maturity. We've started to see that, especially over the last year, where he was, where Ricciardo was his teammate and he was showing himself as that number 1 driver in that team. He's doing a stellar job at VCARB, and I think long way to continue. I got him as 13th, as I don't think the car is going to do him any favours. I think he's going to pull as much out of it as he can. But for me, I'll be over the moon for him if he can just get up to that kind of 13th level. He's competing there in the mix with the Aston Martin, with the Alpines, a little bit of the Williams, and I think that's going to put him in good stead. You never know how it's going to go with Liam Lawson either. I think he needs these consistent races. So if it all goes Pete Tom for Liam, then if he's kept his cool head, shown his maturity, and he's proven the doubt is wrong, you never know what can happen half season. We've seen it before. We may see it again. Okay, into 14th place, and it's Oliver Bearman. I love Bearman's performance when he filled in for Ferrari. I think it was when Carlos was having his appendix out for that short stint. And, the lad has clearly got talent, and now he needs some experience. And, I'm hoping he just has a consistent year in the Haas. The Haas, again, it can blow hot and cold. We've seen moments of magic from that car. But, I think there's going to be a bigger team swooping in for the likes of Bearman at some point. And if Haas can give him the tools he needs just to get that consistent race pace under his belt and show what he can do, I think there's going to be some reward at the end of it for him. And let's just hope he has a good year. 15th for me, Lance Stroll. I'll be honest, I've only left Lance in here, as honestly I think the car's going to help him get there. Project Stroll is a whole different conversation. And for me, it's hindering this team more than helping things. And with Adrian on board, maybe they're hoping they can come up with a miracle, but I just don't think Lance is of the quality that the rest of the grid is showing. I'll say no more at this point. We'll leave that one there. Maybe that's another video I'll do at some point, my thoughts and feelings on that. 16th place is Esteban Ocon. Now, I'll be honest, I've never been the biggest Ocon fan. I think it's been his attitude, to be honest with you. A bit of arrogance shining through, and you could argue every driver does that, but I never really got on with the way he kind of held himself around the grid and things, and each to their own, I guess. But, his behaviour off the track also has come across on it, I think, over the last couple of seasons, especially the early ones. And, Haas have got an opportunity to change that. I think now he's kind of in a lower team than where he would have been seen in that Alpine. Then maybe this will be an opportunity for him to shine. I cannot see him outperforming Bearman. I think Bearman is a better driver overall. He's younger, he's a bit hungrier for it, but if Ocon comes out and, really, really goes for it, I think that's going to be a really interesting battle between the two Haas drivers there. Okay, 17th place is Nico Hülkenberg. I would love to have put Nico further up this list. I think he's a really quality driver, but unfortunately the car just isn't going to be there for him. It's being realistic. It's a difficult one to call, because I think, when you look at the driver lineup they had last year, Bottas is obviously a quality driver. Zhou, maybe not so much, we could argue. So have we seen the full potential out of that car? I think Bottas did what he could with it, but obviously now they've had another season to see how they can build. And let's hope Nico can pull some magic out of it. I'd love to see that. I've put him in 7th place just because I think he's going to finish above some of the other rookies that have already been mentioned here, and especially his teammate. But I think it's going to take a bit of work to get some points out. But, we'll see what he can scrape out, and fingers crossed for him. Okay, next up in 18th place is Isack Hadjar. Now, there's no doubt, obviously, these rookies have all got talent to get to the level they have in F1. But personally, I just haven't seen enough of Isack. Out of the rookies, I think this V-carb isn't going to be too easy to handle. I think Yuki, where he's had that extra experience in the car over the last couple of seasons, is going to be more settled in that, and I think that's what's going to be the differential here. I'm hoping for a bit of rookie magic. The V-carb car can clearly come up with something on the day when it needs to, but he's going to take a good few races to settle in, maybe the whole season. I've not got him scoring any points if a couple of stragglers at the end, but again, hopefully proven wrong. But 18th place for Isack Hadjar. 19th place, I have put Jack Doohan. Now, I should say the last name in Isack and the final two names for me are very, very close on the pecking order, and it was hard to pick where they're going to go, but someone has to go somewhere, right? And I just don't think this is going to happen for Jack. There's clearly some heat out there, confidence issues maybe we're seeing already, some stemming from other teams. We've got a Helmut Marko throwing around that he's a C-rated driver. That's not... It's look at it two ways, right? Professional sportsman, professional athlete in this position, you can either use that as fuel, or it's going to keep knocking his confidence, especially if he has a few sort of bad runs. So, the car... again, hit and miss, as I've already said, with his teammates in Pierre Gasly. If he can get it locked in, get a couple of points out of it, I'll be really impressed by Jack. I just can't see it happening, unfortunately. However, I've got him ahead of 20th place because I think it's just a slightly better car if he can get it locked in than who's in 20th place. I'm rounding off the grid for my driver championship prediction for the 2025 season is Gabriel Bortoleto. Ironically, where Helmut Marko rates Jack Doohan as a C-level driver, he rates Gabriel Bortoleto as a B-level. So there's some progress there, but I just don't think the car's going to help him. Similar to Jack, it's getting that track experience, it's getting the experience of the whole race setup, the weekend, the pressure that comes with that. It's his first run as an F1 season, as it is others on the grid, but he's literally driving a bucket around. Let's see how it plays out. Not much more to add there to close off the grid for the 2025 season. So that's it for my driver predictions for the 2025 season. Some a bit are up in the air. We got lots of rookies on the grid. It'll be interesting to see what they can come up with, which is really exciting. When the lights are out there shining on them, the media, it is a completely different environment to where they've come from before. Coming back to the point, I think McLaren are going to have things absolutely locked in this year, closely followed by Ferrari, then the Red Bulls and Mercedes chewing it out, and I'm hoping for a Williams in 5th place, giving a bit of clue to where I think the constructors may lie this year in that as well. I won't be doing a separate constructors video. I've wrapped most of what I think into this anyway, but whichever way it goes, I think this is going to be a brilliant season. Thank you for tuning in if you have watched this and it has reached you. Hopefully I'm getting the algorithm hit as we move along. Please hit that like button. Please leave a comment on your thoughts of where you think drivers are going to finish this year. Tell me I'm wrong. Happy to be proven wrong. This is the beauty of sport. It's always up for debate. And give the channel a subscribe as well. Hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Happy racing.